All right, so today's going to be a fun one. The Avalanche have been, according to a lot of sources, according to a lot of insiders, been the leading team or the favorite to land Taylor Hall. Obviously, Taylor Hall, pending UFA. The Devils are trying to move on from him and bring in big assets back. So this video is going to be 5 trade scenarios for Taylor Hall, specifically with the Avalanche. So 5 different packages from the Avalanche in order to acquire Taylor Hall. I'm going to end it with a little bit of a fun one from a fan that I might rip into a little bit, but 5 trade scenarios. So if you are new to the channel, please do subscribe, drop a like for more content like this, and comment your thoughts on these trade scenarios, which one you think is most likely, most unlikely. So let's go through it, starting with the first one. The Avalanche acquiring Taylor Hall, the Devils acquiring one of Comfort or Burakovsky. Again, we've seen how great of a season Burakovsky's had. The extension, the contract's looking good. Comfort, more reliable, can play all positions. So I think this deals more of the Devils acquiring a younger roster player, along with Drew Helleson, who's playing for Boston College, Shane Bowers, who was considered one of the top 5 prospects for the Avalanche, and a conditional second. So you can consider the conditional second becoming a first if they re-sign Taylor Hall or if they win the Stanley Cup. It could be one of those 2 conditions. So I like this trade. I think it's maybe more unlikely out of the other deals you'll see just because it is the 4 pieces. But it's been rumored that it will require 4 pieces to acquire Taylor Hall, a young roster player, 2 prospects, and a draft pick, or 2 prospects and 2 draft picks. I think that's kind of where you're going to see. So this one, in this scenario, is a younger roster player, 2 prospects, and a higher draft pick. So let's move on to the next one, and then we'll talk more about the different pieces. So Taylor Hall, still going to the Avalanche, in exchange for Bowen Byram, Tyson Jost, and a second-round pick. So for maybe some people already, this is looking familiar. So this was kind of the similar package that the Ottawa Senators acquired in exchange for Mark Stone. Again, Mark Stone re-signed with the Vegas Golden Knights right away, and the Ottawa Senators acquired Eric Brandstrom, which, I mean, you could kind of say is comparable in terms of stock to Bowen Byram. I do think Bowen Byram is going to have a better future. And then the second-round pick, exactly what Ottawa got, along with Eric Brandstrom. And then instead, they got Lindbergh. Obviously, I think Yost has better stock than Lindbergh, but Yost has fallen down out of favor. He's on the 4th line, and he still has some potential. So I think that is the perspective you're looking at there. I think if the Avalanche were very confident in bringing Taylor Hall in and getting that extension, yes, you're losing a guy like Bowen Byram, but it's a similar deal to Mark Stone. You'd be getting Taylor Hall under term, and it depends what kind of contract. If you'd be getting Taylor Hall under a similar contract as Mark Stone, or maybe even less than that, obviously, I think that's a great scenario, but again, you're looking at Bowen Byram and that Avalanche defense core moving forward. If you kept Byram, if you kept Makar, obviously, if you kept Timmins, like moving forward, that would be ridiculous. So I think, and I didn't even mention Samuel Girard, so that top 4 in the future, but you're also potentially getting Taylor Hall in this deal. So I do like it in the sense that if you were to re-sign Taylor Hall, you'd be looking at what the Vegas Golden Knights got in Mark Stone. The Avalanche could get Taylor Hall. Yes, they'd be losing Byram, but you obviously got to give up to get. And if they could get that extension, it might be worth it. So Bowen Byram, I'll say it right now, is not going to be in any more of these trade scenarios. I think it is in a bigger picture, unlikely that they will trade Bowen Byram. So this one is the other defensive prospect, which is Connor Timmins. So Timmins, Martin Kaut, and a first-round pick. So Kaut, we've seen time in the AHL with the Colorado Eagles. And then Connor Timmins is projected to be a top 4 defenseman and then the first-round pick. So Martin Kaut, for me, is a little bit of a question mark. He's a bigger winger, drafted a couple of years ago. And then, obviously, for the first-round pick, it's a guaranteed. I don't know if you're getting kind of question marks there and not getting the full 4 pieces if you're looking at the Devils' perspective. And I want to make this clear. I'm not a Devils fan. I'm not an Avalanche fan, so there's no bias here. But I do think if it's going to be only 3 pieces, you're guaranteed to have to give up a first-round pick and then, obviously, 2 decent pieces, and in this case, it's Connor Timmins, who's projected as a top 4 defense, and Martin Kaut, who's projected anywhere around a top 9 forward. He's obviously not on the upward side of that. He has like 0 points through 7 games so far to start the season, and then last year he averaged, I think, a 0.5 points per game in the AHL as a 19-year-old. So again, he's only 20 years old, so he is still very young. So I don't mind this trade. I think the Devils fans might think they want more in this, but again, you're getting Connor Timmins and a first-round pick on top of Martin Kaut. I think this could be the worst-case scenario for the Devils, but I still think it's a decent return. Okay, so I think this return improves. So Shane Bowers, as I said, is considered to some people as a top 5 prospect in the Avalanche system right now. I believe he's 20 years old still. Samuel Girard, we know Girard. So again, I don't think the Avalanche want to trade Girard, but if it comes down to Girard or Byram, I think Avalanche fans would want to keep Byram and move on from Girard, even though Girard is very good. He's definitely a top 4 defenseman. And then that first round pick again, I think this is an improvement from the last trade you just saw. You're getting a for sure in Samuel Girard, a young defenseman for the Devils. Then you're getting a top, like I said, top 5 forward prospect or top 5 prospect in general in Shane Bowers in terms of the Avalanche system. Got to make that clear. And then the first round pick, again, I don't think it's a condition if it's only 3 pieces going back, and still 3 significant pieces, I would say, for Taylor Hall. Again, in any of these deals, obviously it's ideal for the Avalanche to re-sign Taylor Hall. If you were to lose these 3 pieces and not end up re-signing Taylor Hall and it's just a rental and then you don't have a successful playoff run, then that looks like a big loss for the Avalanche. Okay, so this one, Alex Newhook, Justus Annunen, Drew Helleson, and a conditional second. So Annunen for me is the one that's really interesting here. 6'4", out of Finland. It looks like, and I obviously make this video before the World Juniors, it looks like he's going to be the starting goaltender for Finland in the World Juniors. So we'll get a taste of what he can do. And then obviously for a guy like Alex Newhook, first round draft pick, centerman, he looks like he has a lot of potential. And I talked about the Avalanche, for me, were one of the big winners of this past draft. Drafting Byram and Newhook in the first round, it was ridiculous. So if you can include Byram, if you do not want to include Byram, then the next guy in that draft that you drafted in the first round, Newhook. So Newhook has real potential to be a top 6 forward, up the middle. And then Annunen, 6'4". The Devils obviously have had goaltending issues. I'm not saying Annunen is projected to be a starter, but he has some upside, huge upside, and the size is obviously a huge factor there. And then Drew Helleson, again, right shot defenseman, plays in Boston College. So I mean, he's got potential there. Not the huge point producer, but again, another bigger guy. And I think you're getting a prospect from all 3 positions here, forward, defense, and goaltending. And then the conditional second, again, you make your choice. It could be for the condition of the Stanley Cup, condition of Taylor Hall re-signing. So those are my 5 trade scenarios. Again, it could be a little different. You could shift it around, but these are some of the pieces. And I talked about it in my top 20 trades or potential trades, whatever that video was called, for Taylor Hall. And I talked about the Avalanche. I talked about potentially a younger roster player, whether it was Confer or Burakovsky. Burakovsky, ideally, the Avalanche don't want to lose him. Even if they were to acquire Taylor Hall, he could still play in a second or third line role. I was just making the point of if the Devils are not going to get a top prospect like Byram or like Timmins or like Newhook, they're going to want at least a young roster player and then prospects and obviously draft picks on top of that. But if you obviously get a top draft or a top prospect like Timmins or Newhook, then you don't necessarily need to give up a younger roster player. That's going to help you in the playoff run. So I like this package probably the most, one of the most, to be honest, because for the Avalanche, you're keeping your 2 top defensive prospects in Byram and Timmins, and they're really focusing on the defense. And where you're improving the biggest here is obviously the offense if you're acquiring Taylor Hall. So losing a prospect like Newhook, Annanen's still a big question mark, even though he's got a lot of potential. And then Drew Helleson's probably 3rd, 4th, or 5th on your younger defenseman list. So whether it's 19, 20 years old, Helleson's a little down that chart, but he's still got potential, obviously. And then a conditional 2nd round pick. It could become a 1st round pick. And if it does become a 1st round pick, that means either one of 2 things. 1, you won, or 2, you re-sign Taylor Hall. I think those are 2 positives, and I think at the end of the day, yes, a 1st round pick is something you want to keep, but if you're winning the Stanley Cup or re-signing Taylor Hall, I think that's a big win in general. So at the end of the day, Taylor Hall's going to be better than any of those players right there. He's going to be better than Alex Newhook, which is the best piece in that deal. So maybe the Devils think they don't get enough, but in my opinion, if you're getting a 1st on top of 3 pieces like that, and you're not even getting Taylor Hall past this year, I think that's a win. So this might be the best package. I'm going to look at this one deal that someone put through Cap Friendly, Armchair GM. I don't really like it, but we'll talk about it. So another whack at Hall, created by Richard Avs. So the Avalanche here acquire Taylor Hall and Sami Vatanen, and they're giving up Connor Timmins, AJ Greer, Justus Annunen, Sampo Ranta, and a 1st round pick in 2021. So first, I don't understand the additional details. How does that benefit the Devils, if it's changing from a 2021 to a 2020, if they were to acquire Taylor Hall and Vatanen, that's making the Avalanche a lot better. And they'll probably lose both those pending UFAs, or at least one of those pending UFAs, if it was to, at the end of the day, so if they lose both those guys or one of those guys, the team becomes worse next year is what I'm trying to say. AJ Greer, no, you're not getting much potential there. Sampo Ranta, yes, it's a wild card, early 20s. Justus Annunen, I've already talked about. Connor Timmins, I've already talked about. So it's an okay package, but to be honest, I don't even know if that would be enough for just Taylor Hall. Yes, maybe, but then you're adding Semi Vatanen, who, in my opinion, could get you at least a second-round pick and a prospect. I don't think it's nearly enough. So I just kind of wanted to look at this one out of a whole bunch of other examples, just because I think the Avalanche, this is from an Avalanche fan, so I think you can see the bias a little bit here. And then the Devils, on different perspectives, are expecting Byram a first and another piece. You're not getting that. So I just wanted to make the point of, I think there's a lot of biases here. I tried to kind of put fair deals together where the Devils are getting decent pieces back, significant pieces where they can say they at least got one piece that they can look back on and, you know what, we were going to lose Taylor Hall anyways, and whether it's a Connor Timmins or an Alex Newhook, whoever you get in that deal, at least you can say you got a significant piece back for Taylor Hall, who at the end of the day is your superstar on this team right now, despite the struggles. And for the Avalanche, they're winning this deal if they re-sign Taylor Hall. That's plain and simple. Even if they don't do well in the playoffs, if they re-sign Taylor Hall, moving forward, that defense core, if you don't give up one of the significant defensemen, as well as the forward group of, you're talking about Landeskog, Rantanen, McKinnon, Kadri, Hall, Burakovsky, that top six is ridiculous. So I think if Taylor Hall re-signs with the Avalanche win this deal, unless the Devils got Byram plus, then there's the potential there for the Devils to win the trade. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you're new. Hit that like button. Comment your thoughts. This was John from Hot Take Hockey. Have a good one. Peace out.